Detective anime. Anime where people go around solving mysteries. I love them, you should love them too, and that's what this video is about. I'm gonna cover 10 different detective anime that I've watched, so if you're looking for some detective anime, you've come to the right place. Congrats, you can use Google. But without further ado, let's cover 10 detective anime that I've ranked from worst to best. Now, this anime is kind of completely weird. It completely lies to us and just has multiple completely unbelievable moments. Even if you ignore the more fantastical moments with the secret organization that the already dead detective is fighting against, it is super weird. The only reason why I'm even including it is because I can't really make a list of detective anime when this one has detective in the title, now can I? First off, the way this anime even works is with Siesta and Kimi taking a stand against an evil organization that's trying to take over Earth called Spectre. The problem is that it's barely even detective work. Sure, you're finding them and using clues to do stuff, but detectives don't usually fight against evil organizations trying to take over Earth. And otherwise, the main characters are middle schoolers. Like, this supposed middle schooler was about to take a fight alone. And when the flight attendant asked for detectives, she was like, oh yeah, these two kids are real detectives. Sure, I'll just let them deal with it. Like, what the hell? I find it completely unbelievable. At least make them high schoolers or something. That would be somewhat believable. But right here it says middle schoolers, so what are we to do? And hell, the detective isn't even dead. She's right there, not already dead. This anime is just full of lies, is what I would say if I wasn't lying right now. That only covers the first episode, because come the second, there's a time skip where the detective is already dead. Come the second episode, the detective is actually already dead, like the title suggests, and the main character Kimi is a high school student, so that's chill as well. He meets up with another girl who has a legendary detective's heart in her through a heart transplant she needed to live. The rest of the anime is spent with the detective actually being dead and Kimi and Natsunagi solving cases together in the legendary detective's wake, where Kimi uses all the knowledge he gained from the legendary detective to continue being a detective. Is what I would be saying if I wasn't lying again. I honestly can't believe you fell for that twice. Because come episode 5, we're in the past again, and the detective is alive again. And it's like, for a lot of the anime where it's just in the past. And I honestly don't know if you could call an anime the detective is already dead, if the majority of it is spent with the detective being alive. And sure, they do eventually go back to the present, where we get a continuation of the story from the past, where an honestly very obvious reveal is made to the audience, which I'm not gonna spoil regardless. It's a rom-com ex-detective ex-secret organization battle anime that I can barely even call a detective anime, but it's still one, so I give it like a 5 to 6 out of 10, but mostly just 5, so yeah. This next anime though is really good, but it is a bit deranged, as the title suggests. Next up, you have Kamonohashi, Deranged Detective, or Forbidden Deductions depending on where you're getting your title translated from. The way this anime works is by Ran Kamonohashi from the title and Toto solving cases. Well, it's mainly just Ran solving the cases, with Toto being there as both a protege to Ran, and so he is seen as the person solving the cases instead of Ran. And Ran does this because he isn't allowed to be a detective. A super fancy school for high-grade detectives, yes, of course that's the thing of this anime, banned Ron from ever being a detective or making deductions after an incident occurred where Ron murdered some people. Now, of course, Ron didn't do this. He was framed. But no one, not even himself at the detective school, could prove his innocence, so he was not allowed to detect. And this is where the forbidden deductions come from, because he's literally forbidden from making deductions. But there's also the fact that every time Ron solves a case, he then tells the murderer to off themselves, using mind control. And they actually do it. But that's the third reason Toto is there, to stop their death. So through Toto, Ron is able to be the detective he always wanted to be, because he really loves being a detective. And you may be asking why Ron is even allowed in the murder scenes when the civilians aren't usually allowed to be there at all. Well, one, Toto's boss with a question mark is completely smitten by Ron, and two, he always disguises himself to both get into the crime scene and avoid the death penalty from Blue, the detective school that I mentioned before. And there's this whole joke that him disguising himself is like Perry the Platypus, that being double cool because his last name, Kamonohashi, also means platypus, but I couldn't think of a joke, so sorry. And for the first season of this anime, it's really reaching for the deductions being made. Primarily being the first two cases that he solves actually, like, it just so happens that the random case he was working on also connected to the murder case that the boss with the question mark was working on, and Ron just so happened to know, like, everything. It was just a bit far-fetched with how everything was being deduced. Like, have at least some plausibility with how Ron figured half the things he figured out. And this really gives notes to the named Deranged detective, because you really have to be deranged to think that Ron figured all of this out naturally. And also because he likes to lay next to and talks to dead bodies, but that's whatever. But in the later half of the first season, and definitely in the second season, it mellows out and Ron figures out stuff way more plausibly, and it's not some Deus Ex Machina that allows him to figure everything that he's supposed to figure out. But this anime is really your basic detective show, where the main characters aren't actually detectives by trade. So if you're looking for some clean basic detective work, Kamonohashi is a great one to watch. I easily give it a 7 out of 10 for detective anime. This next one too is very detective-y in quality with a supernatural twist. Besides the goofy odd title, this anime is actually quite nice of a detective anime. It's called Undead Girl Murder Farce, but Crunchyroll has it as just Undead Murder Farce, so they tried their best to fix it there. I mean, there is an Undead Girl, but like, I don't really know what they mean by murder farce. The jury is still out on that one. But in this anime, each of the detectives are monsters. An immortal girl who uses all her wisdom of her long life to solve any mystery that comes her way. A half-oni who can defeat any other monster, uses his strength to fight for her. And a maid who is, human. They are the real monsters, I guess. She's just a human who's really skilled at fighting and stuff. But the whole time there's a plot ring in the background where the characters are chasing a mystery man with an M on his cane. He stole the immortal girl's body and he made the half-oni a half-oni. So all the while solving cases, they are chasing this mystery man. But they go around solving mysteries for other monsters. Like who murdered the vampire mother? And is there a werewolf killing the villagers? Stuff like that. Monster-related mysteries. But the way all the mysteries play out is really nice. You gotta watch everything play out in front of you while getting every piece of evidence. One thing this anime does really well, connected to the detective genre specifically, is that it shows every piece of evidence that the detective gets to see. And it makes sure you see it as well, so the viewers can be on the same page. It rarely takes evidence from something that happened in the background and or something that was only seen on screen for like a second. This anime is really good at showing all the cards it's got to the viewers so they can come to a conclusion on their own. In terms of detective anime, this one really detectives out, and I really enjoy it for that. And honestly, all the mysteries are pretty good. Each conclusion they come to is completely plausible, where they give the audience enough information to come to a conclusion on their own before the real answer is actually revealed. And if you know more lore and cryptids, you can more easily guess what the answer to the question is, and I quite like that about this anime. And after most of the deductions are made, there is usually a big fight scene. The fight scenes aren't just shoved in there to be there, they actually come about naturally and they aren't actually all quite quality, so I can't even complain about them. And there's a whole story beats about how monsters are being persecuted and killed off, where most of the monsters are seen as completely evil. And this whole story beat is amazing in two ways. One, because the main characters being monster put some discrimination towards them and gives them more reason to help solve cases for monsters to prove their innocence. And it shows a pretty straight line of how our world and the world of the anime could connect, especially if all the monsters did get wiped out. I mean, in the later half of the season, Jack the Ripper, Sherlock Holmes, Frankensteins, and more classic tales of old appear, and it's done all really well. If you love monsters and detective shows, this one is amazing. It gets a 7 out of 10 to 8 out of 10 for me, and I really enjoyed it. This next one's also about other spooky specters investigating things for spooky specters. Next is Inspector, which is a pun of someone who inspects stuff and a specter like a ghost, because this anime is centered around yokai. Much like Undead Girl Murder Farce, it's about monsters solving problems for monsters. But instead of monsters that come from European folklore, we get to mainly see specters from Japanese folklore. And the two main characters are special in their own way, where Kodako, the detective in quotes, is the goddess of wisdom for yokai. She was abducted when she was young by a lot of yokai and asked to become their goddess of wisdom. She agreed, so they took one of her eyes and legs because most gods of wisdom are like that, so she basically became a god. And Kuro, the other main character, is part Kudon and part mermaid, where his grandma tricked him and a lot of his family to eat meat of both of the aforementioned creatures, and Kuro and his cousin were the only two to survive. But they became able to predict the future and be immortal, because mermaids are immortal and Kudons can predict the future once before they die. This allows him to predict the future and die indefinitely because he has mermaid in him. Now, this concept alone is pretty cool. It worked for Undead Girl Murder Farce pretty well, and we see this especially in the second episode. Both of them, mainly Kodako, go around and help yokai that need their help by solving mysteries and settling disputes. Like in episode 2, where she gaslights a giant snake water god into believing a made-up yet totally reasonable reason for why some random girl dumps a dead body in its lake. If you had more like this, the rest of the season would be great. But the rest of the season is just one single mystery. They spend 9 full episodes just dealing with one problem. Sure, we were able to see the skills and abilities of both on full display while seeing and setting a major antagonist in the anime, which, don't get me wrong, is nice. But to spend practically the entire season on it is not chill at all. It took just way too much time, and it got a bit boring come the end. I really can't lie. But come the second season, I do have to say it is absolutely perfect. It is exactly what I wanted from this type of anime. Even before the main characters get involved, we, the audience, get to see a scope of each case. We get to see the happenings, the problems, and the evidence before the detective even arrives, giving us a chance to solve it before the detective even gets an idea, which is just so amazing. And even more to how good Season 2 is, there are multiple different cases taken on, each in its unique own way, and none of the solutions are too far-fetched to how they were gotten. This anime is really good at giving both the audience and the client a satisfying conclusion to a case, and this even holds strong in Season 1, though the case was long, it was satisfying come the end. And again, to make it even better, the fact that yokai plays such a massive role in this anime make it better than just detective anime. And honestly, I like this anime, but I really like Season 2. In my opinion, you don't even really need to watch Season 1 that much. It's not extremely important, but Season 2 is where the really good stuff is at. So I give it an 8 out of 10 for Season 2 and like a 6 to 7 out of 10 for Season 1. This next anime though, despite its high quality, is a bit heavy compared to the past few. So here's okay, Pluto. This anime is a bit different. Not in the sense that I lied to about being a detective anime, but it's not very lighthearted at all. Most other anime on this list have a bit of comedy or lightheartedness, but Pluto decides to shirk that all to get their message across. That is, hate is bad. And the only thing hate does is breed more hate. That's like the main message or theme of this anime, and they make sure you know it. But they like repeat the same line over and over, so it kinda gets a bit overplayed come the end. Anyways, what is this anime about? Well, it's set in the future in almost a parallel universe to Astro Boy. I say that because it's got all the characters from that, like Adam, the Astro Boy, but it really doesn't follow the history or plot of Astro Boy. In this world, there was a huge war where a ton of death and destruction took place. The 7 most advanced robots all took part in the war, killing and destroying and or being an idol of sorts. So they all had a hand in the devastation it caused. And as you know, war causes a lot of pain and hate to form, and like I said, that's what this anime is about. So there's this killer who's killing the people and robots connected to the war, an investigation team who are behind it all, starting and the 7 best robots. So, Gestink, I absolutely can't pronounce that name correctly, one of the 7 best bots is a detective and he tries to solve these murders. And the whole anime revolves around him doing detective work trying to solve the case. The whole time we get introduced to the other 7 robots and you're like, wow, these guys are such cool people, I sure hope nothing bad happens to them. Yeah, something bad happens to them. But the story itself is quite nice. There are quite a number of reveals, and I do have to say that all of them were quite good, and not so completely obvious that you see it coming from a mile away, but see-through enough that it does all feel satisfying. I'll just point out Pluto's character design was the most disappointing reveal of all. Otherwise, this anime covers the convergence of AI and human intelligence, the problems that causes and hate that can form, how if an AI becomes too human, it's a bad thing, and all that stuff. If you're someone who really doesn't care about artificial intelligence and stuff, this anime probably won't mesh with you because that's like a big driving factor behind this anime. Besides hate, it is the biggest driving factor, so I'd avoid it if you're like that. But otherwise, this anime is good. The mystery is nice, and the fact that it's set in the future allows for very different technology to assist with the detecting, so it's a nice change of pace compared to the others. There is quite the minimal big brain activity going on here, so it's quite based in the sense of how normal detective work is. But otherwise, it's a good watch. I give it an 8 out of 10 as a detective anime, but more of a 9 out of 10 for an anime in general. This next anime is both an amazing detective anime, but an amazing anime in general as well. Here's This anime was one of my favorites early on in my anime watching journey, and I still really do like it. It's just a really good anime with an actually depressing ending. In fact, I liked it so much I was going to be my 3rd video. I still have the script, I just didn't like it, so I scrapped it. Anyways, what is this anime about? Well, it all takes place on an island school for kids, with special abilities called talents, which are basically super overpowered superpowers. Stuff that breaks all the laws of physics and are really strong, yet all have one super stupid weakness. But the detectiveness comes from Nana. Now this nerd whose name is Nana, right? This guy who we followed for all of episode 1 is a fake-out protagonist, which I just love because he can do some really unexpected things if the main character isn't really the main character come the end of episode 1. And by God, did they do such a good job with this one. Anyways, basically, this is Nana. She's talentless, yet she tells everyone she has the ability to read minds. She fakes it by just being a genius detective. She sees small hints that people wouldn't normally notice. Small tells to see if they're lying. Small things like an oversized expensive watch. The smallest little details all get pieced together in her mind, making her amazing. But her main goal on the island is to kill. She was sent by the government in order to kill every single other kid there. Because if you give an adolescent child the power to change the world around them, they get a bit arrogant and start killing loads of people. So she's doing a good thing, right? Well, the first part of the anime is all about her killing people. Around people she acts all nice, being such a sweet, innocent Nana. The whole time she's reading everyone around her, choosing her next target, learning how to counter their powers and using her amazing detective mind to kill them. Then she becomes a detective. She gets nominated as a leader for the class, so she's set up to solve all the disappearances, which of course she causes, so she both has to figure out how to kill people with supernatural powers, all the while figuring out how to get everyone off her back. The problem is, there is another genius on the school ground with Kyoya. He is her foil. Just like her, he's got a detective brain and is trying to solve the murders, and he immediately pins Nana as the murderer. So in part 2, it's a battle of the minds where the two detectives go mind to mind trying to prove innocence and placing blame, and it is so well done. Nana is the murderer pretending to be a detective, with the real detective right beside her, none the wiser. It definitely gives me vibes of another anime with a similar structure to what I just described, but I can't quite put my finger on it. And the next part is so as well, because you learn that actually these people do deserve to die. You'll see more and more of these talented people who are supposed to save humanity be absolutely corrupt and evil. All of them are just the worst, to the point where Nana doesn't even need to kill them because some of them just start killing each other. Like, it's crazy, and at that point, Nana actually becomes a detective trying to figure out who else is killing people. And it's just such a fun watch. And keep in mind, everything I just said only happens within 13 episodes. It's crazy, and none of what I just said even covers the ending, which is just so amazing on its own. But this anime is super underrated. The amount of detective shenanigans and mind games that play in this anime are top notch. If I had one complaint, it'd be that some of the things Nana picks up on are only on screen for a few seconds, and they help her come to a conclusion, so you really have to be paying attention. So that's a bit hard. Otherwise, this anime is just perfect. I have to give it a 9 out of 10. It is super underrated, and I don't think it deserves to be that underrated. So yeah, the next anime also actually includes people being detectives out of school. Honestly, I didn't even mean to line them up like that. That's crazy. Oh well, here's Danganronpa. Reality slips far away. Fiction comes alive. We start to play. This next anime is really good, especially in terms of detective anime. Now, for starters, Danganronpa is based off a video game. It's basically the game, but animated. I could have dedicated this section to another anime like that, being the Ace Attorney series, where again, it's a game turned anime. But I decided to go with Danganronpa because 1, this is the one I actually watched, and 2, Phoenix Wright is an attorney, not a detective. So what is Danganronpa about? Well, the best of the best, or as this anime likes to call it, the super high school level of random different categories like luck, hall monitor, baseball are all gathered in a school. They were meant to just have a normal school life, but they were captured and are now forced into a death game by this jerkwad of a bear. And the only way they are allowed to leave the school is if they commit murder and get away with it. Now, normally people wouldn't actually commit murder just for the chance of freedom, but this bear bitch gave them some really good reasons for wanting to escape, aka threatening their loved ones and blackmailing. So of course they'd start killing. So every case involves us following the main character of super high school level Luck around as he and the other students try to solve different murder cases. The detective work is really nice, especially seeing how it's based on a game, so they just took all the good parts of gathering clues, talking to people, and snooping around, and just animated it. And when it gets to the trial section, where they all have to come together and deliberate on who the murderer is, that's where the real big brain stuff comes into play. In terms of detective anime, it's really good in clues, accusations, and amount of cases covered in this anime. All the while, there's an overarching story ring in the background where the main character tries to figure out why they're all trapped in there and how to get out. Being able to cover both multiple cases of detective work while also running the overarching story is really something else. And with all the characters being very different, seeing as they all specialize in one unique thing each, it's got quite the interesting cast of characters. And because they're all so unique, when the murderer gets revealed, they all have specialized death animations which are all super cool to see. All in all, this anime is just genuinely a great detective anime, and a good anime even excluding the genre. I personally have only seen season 1 so far, so I can't really attest to anything further, but if it's as quality as the first one, the rest hopefully are just as good. 9.5 out of 10 just because it didn't go plus ultra, meaning it didn't completely blow me out of water, but it was indeed a super high school level anime. This next anime will be our first 10 out of 10, so get ready for... Now, this anime doesn't really completely fit the video. Sure, there's this guy trying to solve mysteries where he looks for clues and comes to conclusions like a detective does, but this one is definitely more of a mystery anime than a detective anime. But I really wanted to include it because I absolutely love this anime, and it's detective enough, right? Well, hopefully it is. Anyways, this anime is really good. It all starts with the main character Sato's ability to travel in time. And no, this isn't a superhero-based anime where magical abilities are at the forefront. Besides his ability, which is more of a plot-driving device, there are 0 other mystical powers in this anime. But his ability less lets him travel through time, but more forces him to go back in time every time an accident happens that he can prevent. Like a kid getting hit by a car, he has to go back in time and erase the incident that happened, sometimes resulting in a worse outcome for him if he did nothing to begin with. But the real story comes when his ability activates again and he pulls his mom into it, asking if she sees anything weird. She notices some weird man taking a little girl away and he notices her. She then puts everything together and connects the incident to another incident that happened in Satoru's past and realizes the real perpetrator is still at large to this day. And so the guy kills her because he knows she is smart. Then some neighbor walks in and sees Satoru next to the dead mom, and he gets blamed for the murder. His ability activates and it sends him way back into the past where the original incident takes place. So the entire anime is Satoru trying to solve the murder, so both the kid in the past that got way back when and his mom in the present stay alive. So he uses his knowledge from the future and his adult mind to be able to solve the mystery in the past. The whole time learning more and more about the victim whose life is absolutely, completely depressing, with two parents who completely abuse her, and no friends at school or anyone trying to help her at all. With even the main character the first time around ignoring her and letting her die. Luckily though, he uses his chance to change everything. He does what he wished he could have done, and he finds clues and learns more by, just talking to Hinazuki, the main victim he's trying to save, and just paying more attention to his surroundings that most kids just don't do. But the way he pieces together the story and the information about the case based on both information he has from the future and information he's newly getting from the past is honestly really cool. Because he has to be a detective while the crime is happening. He looks for clues as everything is going down, which is just really cool. And it's like super cinematic with his ability being related to movie reels, and when he's in the past there's these bars which are there like reels on a movie tape, which is just a nice touch to add to this already great anime. And this anime is just super amazing and I love it, so 10 out of 10. Now the next one, the two main characters are also time-traveling detectives. Okay, you got me again. Much like your Ace, this one isn't really a detective anime. It's a detective donghua, so I'd say that's better, right? Oh well, that doesn't matter. What does matter is how absolutely amazing this donghua is. Link Look is easily one of my favorites on this list, not only because of the way they solve cases, but also because it's absolutely stunning. Everything from the art, the direction, to even the darn background music for the show is top-notch. And I just can't not love it. But let's talk about the actual detective side of this donghua for starters. Well, this show does this part flawlessly as well. In the first season, in total 7 cases are covered, each being both actually intriguing to watch because the stories behind them are amazing, and absolutely depressing because, I don't know, why not make the show like that, right? But let me explain how everything works. Our two main characters are Lu Guang and Cheng Zhaoxi. They both have special powers which heavily utilize photos. Lu Guang can use a photo to retrace everything that happened in the photo within 12 hours of when the photo was taken, while Cheng Zhaoxi, on the other hand, has the ability to possess the person who took the photo when the photo was taken, allowing him to essentially travel back in time. People come to the shop they work at with cases about things they either want to learn from the past or things they want to change from the past. Like a guy who wanted to tell everyone he cared about that he cared about them before they died, which he never got the chance to do. Then Lu Guang scopes out the photo to get a picture of what happens, and Cheng Zhaoxi goes into the photo to either change or get info from the past. Now, this concept alone is great. Time-traveling detectives is a nice story alone, but because Zhaoxi actually becomes the person who took the photo, he both gets to be in their shoes and see the world from their perspective, but also gains all the trauma they got within those 12 hours. And most of the time, there's some really messed up thing that happens, so he gets like loads of trauma. And that's mainly what Season 1 is. Case from the past. They do it, Zhaoxi gets a lot of trauma. But Season 2 is like an inverse of Inspector, whereas the first season of that anime was one big case, Season 2 of this anime is one big case. Now, I think it's better done this way. We get plenty of content from normal detective business from Season 1, and we get to know the characters, so turning up the stakes for a high-end case isn't a problem at all. And let's just say that Season 2 was just amazing, and the entire story was absolutely depressing and beautiful, so yeah. Link Click is just an amazing show in general, and an absolutely stunning detective donghua. So I give it a 10 out of 10. This next anime is also perfect, so be prepared for... This anime is also absolutely amazing. It's set back in time during 15th century China, which alone gives it a way more interesting and unique setting than any anime on this list. But it's like so good even if we ignore that. First off, I'm pretty sure it's not based on any actual people. They always have this disclaimer at the bottom of episodes saying so you probably won't get too many historical accuracies with this one, sadly. But in almost all other fields, this anime absolutely crushes. The animation is so amazing and consistent throughout the 24-episode series, and the detecting is so amazing. Now, this anime has a special focus on poison, especially at the beginning. Mao, the main character, is an apothecary that loves poison, seeing poison and testing poison mainly on herself. She doesn't go around poisoning others, but more enjoys the feeling of poison. She was raised an apothecary and was one day kidnapped and sold off to the palace. There she solved the mystery of why all the concubines were getting sick that apparently no one else could figure out. After doing so, she got recognized by this dude everyone calls hot and became a lady in waiting. And so from that point, every time there was a murder or a death, the hot man would tell her to solve it and she would figure out how they died. Now, most of the time it was poison related because it's in the past and poisoning was one of the better ways to kill. But also because, again, that's like one of the main parts of the show. In the later parts of this anime, though, it does go from just being about poison to them being about general mysteries as well, like who blew up the storehouse and a mystery left behind by a master blacksmith for his kids, which is pretty cool because she was able to solve them all. And I did really like the way she solved things as well, but at the same time it has a plus ultra form of the problem that most anime on this list have, where other anime show things on screen for a few seconds and just use that info for their deductions. This one's like, yeah, no, we ain't even gonna show that, and just uses Mao's wide berth of knowledge on poisoning and honestly just things in general to solve the case. Like, she knew how to dust fingerprints in 15th century China. Yeah. But at the same time, it's just that cool because you gotta learn a lot of stuff you probably didn't know before. And more on how amazing the deductions are, she has an amazing rule which is completely left out of most anime, which is don't assume. Make sure you know the truth and facts before deducing anything. And this plays a really big role in the later half of this anime where she goes head to head in a battle of wits versus this old general guy. And that whole arc was amazing, and the ending of this anime was also just absolutely amazing. But yeah, the show is just really good. Lots and lots of detectiving, especially filled with poison and stuff like that, so you have to give this anime a 10 out of 10. And that was all of them. But I'm gonna give you a little special bonus of 2 anime that I plan on watching in the future. Now, of course, I can't attest to their quality as I have not watched it myself, but I don't think a video on detective anime would be complete without at least mentioning them. These 2 anime are 1, Bungo Stray Dogs, and 2, Psychopath. Both are extremely popular, so it would be a shame for me not to watch them. But I like to savor anime, so I couldn't really watch them in time to make this video. Anyways, here on screen are all the anime covered and where you can watch them. Each anime is also in the description, so if that's easier, go check it out. But yeah, that's about it. Hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, you can subscribe if you want. But anyways, I'm Ian Ellie, and bye-bye.